भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. Namaskar, my dear friends. This is video number 21 of Panchadasi of Swami Vidyarnaya. This video starts with part 2 of chapter 14, cessation of sorrow. The happiness that is consequent on knowledge is characterized first by the cessation of sorrow. This is the negative aspect of release, while the other three characteristics may be termed the positive aspects. Misery or sorrow is of two kinds, that which belongs to this world and that which is associated with the other world. That there is no misery in this world for him who has realized the self is proclaimed by Vidyarnaya Upanishad, which reads, if a man knows the self as I am this, then desiring what and for what sake will he suffer in the wake of the body? The afflictions of the body are possible for the man who does not see the self and consequently desires things other than it. He struggles desiring something for himself, something else for his son, a third thing for his wife, and so on. Goes the round of births and deaths and is diseased when his body is diseased. But all this is impossible for the man who sees everything as the self. It is only when the jiva gets itself attached to the psychophysical organism that there is for it misery and pain. But its true nature is reality, intelligence, bliss. When it discriminates its true nature from the illusory name and form world, then there is no more misery which is born of the superimposition of agency and enjoyership. It is only when the jiva thinks itself to be the agent and enjoys that it runs after the external objects of sense and comes to grief. The elements of the body, the passions of the mind, and the seeds of both, which lie dormant in sleep, all these are inseparable attributes of avidya and its products. When, through the cognition of non-difference, the Supreme Self is known, the jiva wakes from its slumber and seeks of the superimpositions of the agency, enjoyership, etc. When it is realized that there is in reality neither an enjoyer nor objects of enjoyment, the root of all evil is removed. The thought about merit and demerit is the cause of misery in the next world. For a man who has transcended the notions of merit and demerit, there can be no misery in the other world. Future deeds do not bind him because he lives in the world unattached like water on a lotus leaf. He has no sanchita karma since that has been burnt up in the flames of Brahma knowledge. All his evils are burnt just as the soft fibers of the Isika reeds would burn when thrown into the fire. As the fire which is kindled reduces all fuel to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge reduce all karmas to ashes. He who is free from the notion of I and whose understanding is unsullied, though he slays these men, he slays not, nor is he bound. The actions of the man who has attained release do not bind him. The Kosika Taki Taittiriya Upanishad goes to the extent of saying that even such heinous crimes as matricide, parricide, theft, and infanticide do not affect him who is released. This does not mean that the knower of Brahma can be a moral rake. His very nature cannot lead him to sinful ways. What scripture intends to say is that he is immoral and not immoral. His actions do not spring from him. Hence, he is not responsible for those actions which others see in him. When thus he is not bound by karma, merit and demerit, which are the cause of misery in the other world, do not affect him. Part 3 of chapter 14. Culmination of happiness. The positive aspect of release is that the man who is released attains the culmination of happiness. The Aitareya Upanishad gives the example of Vamadeva who, attaining the fulfillment of all desires, became immortal. The Chandogya Upanishad declares there he moves about laughing, playing, and rejoicing, be it with women or conveyances or relatives, not minding the body in which he was born. Commenting on this passage in the words that serene being, resting in its own nature of the universal self, moves about, sometimes as Indra and others, laughing or eating, all desire food, high and low, sometimes playing and rejoicing with women and others, only in the mind. These being created in the mind by the mere force of will. These women and others being those of the regions of Burma or of this world, not thinking the body that is born of the connection of man and woman, or that which was born for himself, that is, into which he was born, as any thought of the body would only cause pain, as the body abounds in pain. Sankara pertinently points out that this scriptural passage is intended as an eulogy of the knowledge of the self. Hence, this text must not be literally understood as allowing moral lapses in the case of the gyani. As was remarked already, the knower of Brahma cannot by his very nature be immoral. To say that he transcends ethical considerations is one thing, and to say that he is immoral is another. While the former is true, the latter is a gross misrepresentation and distortion of the purport of Scripture. After defining the self as reality, intelligence, infinity, the Taittiriya Upanishads say that he who knows it as placed in the innermost recess, the transcendent Akasha, realizes all his desires with the omniscient Brahma. In the calculus of happiness which the Upanishad gives, there is found a description of the grades of happiness, and it is declared that the happiness which the knower of Brahma attains defies all calculation. If there be a new youth, noble, well versed in scriptures, full of hope, resolute and strong, and if the whole world be full of wealth, for him that is the unit measure of human bliss. The king possessing universal empire is regarded to have reached the summit of human happiness. There is nothing else which he can desire to have in this world. Similarly, the gyani, Who enjoys the supreme happiness is free from wants, all his desires having been fulfilled. But there is difference between the happiness which the king has and that which the gyani enjoys. While the former lies within the frontier of Maya, the latter is located in the realm of Vidya. The king is satisfied for the moment since he has at his command external means of enjoyment in abundance, but very soon he gets disgusted with them and discovers that there is a higher grade of happiness than this. The Jnani has no such fears. His happiness is not extrinsic. It is born of discrimination and not of delusion. He is unafflicted by desires and he is happy because he is desireless. The, hap- the happiness that kings enjoy is observed to be very little when it is compared to those grades of happiness which are above it. The Jnani is without any desire, he has nothing to attain and nothing to accomplish. But the king, not satisfied with what he has got, longs for more happiness. He aspires to equal the human Gandharvas who are beautiful in form, who possess the power of disappearing at will, and who are skilled in dance and song. They are called human Gandharvas, for they have attained Gandharvatva through the abundance of their meritorious deeds performed by them in this aeon as human beings. The happiness that they enjoy is a hundredfold of that which the human possess. A hundredfold of the happiness of human Gandharvas is the unit measure of the happiness of celestial Gandharvas. A hundredfold of the happiness of celestial Gandharvas is the unit measure of the happiness of the man whose abode is the eternal heaven. A hundredfold of the happiness of the means is the unit measure of the happiness of the devas born in heaven. A hundredfold of the happiness of the devas born in heaven is the unit measure of the happiness of gods known as Karam Devas who have been exalted to heaven by their sacrificial deeds. A hundredfold of the happiness of the Karam Devas is the unit measure of the happiness of the Devas. A hundredfold of the happiness of the Devas is the unit measure of the happiness of Indra. The happiness of Indra multiplied by a hundred is the happiness of Brihaspati. Still a hundred times greater is the happiness of Prajapati. A hundredfold of the happiness of Prajapati constitutes the unit measure of the happiness of Hiranyagarbha. The bliss that is experienced by the knower of Brahma is greater than all these grades of happiness. The bliss of self is beyond the reach of speech and mind. The secret of the Jnani's greatness lies in his freedom from desire. Proficiency in scripture and acting according to the dictates of Shruti may be common to all who seek happiness. It is meritorious deeds that are the cause of happiness in the case of all individuals, both human and divine. But what distinguishes the Jnani and his unexcellable bliss is his not falling a victim to the lure of desire. The increase in happiness is proportionate to the decrease in the freedom from desire and greed. In the supreme bliss, which is Brahma, there are no such distinction as happiness and the experiencer thereof. There is scriptural evidence for the non-existence of even the least difference in Brahma. No channel is needed for experiencing that bliss, for it is eternally established, ever attained. What is required is the destruction of nescience, and when that is accomplished, the self-luminous Brahma bliss shines of its own accord. Thus, the bliss that is experienced by the gyani is different from the happiness that is enjoyed by others, not only in degree but also in kind. The happiness of Brahma is the real of which all the other pleasures may be called appearances. The Gyani enjoys the unalloyed bliss and hence the Shruti declares that all his desires are fulfilled. The attainment of all desires in the case of Gyani may also mean that he experiences happiness in all objects and beings in the form of the witness intelligence. In this sense, it may be said that even the ignorant man, because of his real non-difference from the witness, experiences the fulfillment of all desires. But the difference between the man who is released and the man who is bound is this, that while the former knows his non-difference from Brahma, the latter does not. Ignorance is the source of misery and pain. Because the Jnani has realized that he is the self of all, he sings the Saman, I am the food, I am food eater, etc. For him, there is no distinction between enjoyment and the one who enjoys. His is the distinctionless happiness of non-difference. The positive element of release, we said, consists in the achievement of the culmination of all desires, the attainment of the unattained as it were, prapta prapatva, and the accomplishment of the unaccomplished as it were, karta kritritva. As for the two latter aspects of the positive phase of the release, they were set forth in detail in the Tripti-dipa. Hence, for fear of proximity, they are not explained here again. Endeavor and effort are found in a man who is yoked to the wheel of samsara. He labors under a heavy burden imposed on him by Maya. He is estranged from the Supreme Self and he seeks consolation and comfort in things which are finite and perishing. But disappointed and destitute, he realizes that there is no happiness in the finite. Scripture reveals to him that difference is the cause of death. So long as there is the cognition of difference in him, he runs after the things of the world. He wants to accomplish something, to attain something else. But when once he realizes the truth of non-difference, when he is blessed with the intuition of the highest, there are no more obligations for him, no more duties and deeds. Chapter 15. Object Conditioned Bliss. Vijayananda Prakarana. The Vijayananda Prakarana speaks of the trace of Brahma bliss that is found in the objects of sense and describes the method by which that bliss can be discerned. Part 1 of Chapter 15. Reflection of bliss in pure mental modes. The happiness that is associated with the objects of sense is but an aspect of Brahma bliss, though in the case of ignorant it serves as an obstruction to the knowledge of the true. Man of discrimination discern in the reflection of the supreme bliss. This which is of the nature of impartite essence is the supreme bliss. All other beings enjoy but a fraction of that bliss. The happiness The happiness that we find in the objects of sense is of the form of mental modification. Modifications are of three kinds: the pure, the virile, and the dull, answering to the three gunas sattva, rajas, and the tamas. The pure modes are characterized by such elevating and ennobling qualities as renunciation, restraint, generosity, etc. The virile modes are marked by violent passions like thirst, intense attachment, aversion, anger, etc. And the dull modes have the attributes of delusion, fear, etc. In all these modes, there is the reflection of the intelligence aspect of self, but the happiness aspect is reflected only in the pure modes. That the self is reflected in all things is evidenced by the Shruti, which declares, as one fire having entered the world assumes forms according to the shapes of the different objects it burns, so the one soul that exists in all the beings appears in the different forms according to the different objects it enters and exists also without. As the one air having come into the world assumes different forms according to the different objects it enters as breath, so the one Atma that abides in the heart of all the beings appear in different forms according to the different objects it enters and exists outside also. The self of all, though one alone, resides in every being as one and many, just like the reflection of the moon in the water. As one, the reflection is Ishvara, and as many, the reflections are Jivas. Just as the reflection of the moon is dull in impure and muddy water, and bright and clear in pure and undisturbed water, even so, the reflection of the self is entire in pure modes, while it is dull and disturbed in impure modes. This is the reason why we stated above that the virile and dull modes reflect the intelligence aspect of the self, while the pure modes reflect the happiness aspect also. In the virile and dull modes, the happiness aspect is obscured by impurity, and since there is a little purity in them, the intelligence aspect is revealed. Water receives from fire the latter's heat and not its luminosity, but a piece of wood receives from fire both its heat and luminosity. Similarly, while the pure modes reflect the intelligence and happiness aspect of Brahma, the modes which are impure reflect the intelligence aspect and not the happiness aspect. Even among the pure modes, there is difference in the manifestation of happiness. The purer a mode is, the intenser is the manifestation of happiness. When the rajas and tamas qualities overbalance the sattva, then the happiness aspect is obscured totally, and there is the cognition of misery and pain. Desire for external objects bring misery along with it. There is the anxiety whether the desired object would be obtained or not. If it is not obtained, misery increases, and there arises aversion to those things that stand in the way. If the obstruction be difficult to be removed, then there is misery again. Thus, in those activities of the mind which are prompted by rajas and tamas, there is not even a suspicion of happiness. When what is desired is obtained, there is the feeling of pleasure and satisfaction. When it is enjoyed, there is still greater happiness, but in the contact with what is gained, there is only a little amount of happiness. The greater happiness, however, is not in the objects of sense, it is in the non-attachment to objects. This is what we have called the happiness of knowledge. Thus, there are grades of happiness. The purer the mode, the clearer will be the reflection of happiness therein. Scriptures define Brahma as reality, intelligence, happiness. In the inert, there is the revelation of reality alone. Intelligence and happiness are not manifested in non-intelligence things. In the impure modes, as we have seen, there is the manifestation besides the reality of intelligence also. In the pure modes, however, there is the manifestation of all the three. Because Brahma is mixed up with the pure modes, etc., it is called the self with attributes. Misram Brahma. The attributeless Brahma is known through jnana and yoga in the manner set forth in the earlier chapters. So I conclude this video here. Next video number 22 will start with the part 2 of chapter 15, meditation and its kinds. Thank you for watching this video. Namaskar.